Hi, my name is Daniel Laskowitz. I'm a neurologist at Duke. I also serve as the director for the third-year scholarly research experience, and for the next few minutes I'd like to talk about our scholarly research experience, what it is, how it developed, and what it has to offer you. I know the process is a little bit overwhelming when you first start thinking about it, so I'm also going to talk a little bit about how to get started, although that's going to be covered in more detail in future videos. So as many of you know, Duke was the first program to create an immersive scholarly research experience in the nation, and it remains a defining characteristic of the Duke experience. This program was created more than 70 years ago when one of the chair of biochemistry at the time, Philip Handler, recognized that as Duke was in its formative years, to really become nationally relevant, they wanted to create not just great clinicians, but clinician scientists. Medical therapies were evolving rapidly during the time, and they realized that this extra training would really help our Duke trainees impact the future of medicine. So to address this, he created a 9-month experience that was laboratory-based. This was initially in the second year, and this has changed dramatically over the years to where it became after the clinical experience so that there's a true translational experience. That is, you understand what it's like to take care of patients and all the unmet needs there before you do research, and this actually informs your research. The program evolved to include clinical research, especially as the DCRI, the Duke Clinical Research Institute, became a national force, and incorporated some dual degrees, like the Masters of Public Health. This was the state when I was a medical student back in the 1980s. And in fact, I'm somewhat of an unlikely medical director. Because when I entered Duke, I really had no interest in research. I was more clinically oriented. Like many students, I had a little bit of research experience, but I never felt that I owned a project. I never really had the translational perspective about how it could impact medical care, and I didn't have any particular enthusiasm to do research. During that time, it really changed the trajectory of my career to the point where for the past 15 years or so, I've served as the lead of the Duke Clinical Research Experience. And what it did for me was not so much that I always enjoyed the research experience. It was somewhat out of my comfort zone. I was working in a lab. It's not something I had done before. But perhaps more importantly, it made me realize that what I was doing was directly relevant to the future of medical health care. And because I've had the clinical experience, it could actually inform my future research. So the scholarly research experience has changed dramatically over the years, in the ensuing 20 or 30 years, and incorporates not just basic and clinical research, but now it includes big data, humanities-based research, global health, public policy, dual degrees, and not just traditional PhD and MPH degrees, but also students have done dual degrees in clinical research, they've done MBAs, they've done public policy, psychology, theology, and a number of other dual degrees. We literally have students doing global research in sub-Saharan Africa and starting new biotech companies in the Silicon Valley. So I think it's important to understand that this is an ongoing process, and we're always trying to be responsive to student needs and to evolve and try to foresee where medicine is going. So for example, in recent years, we've had enhanced biomedical engineering collaborations to include machine learning, artificial intelligence. We've strived to develop a new program for people who intentionally want to create careers in medical education as medical education directors, as well as introduce qualitative research. We also try to be responsive to students because we recognize that the scholarly research experience is not all you're doing in the third year. You're worrying about residency applications, studying for boards. So we've really tried to work with the advisory deans, as well as other leadership within the School of Medicine to try to integrate the third year in a way that serves you the best. So the huge scope of the third year is a feature, but it's also a bug. It can be paralyzing to look at these dizzying opportunities, especially as a first year. So I was going to offer a few concrete examples about how to get started. Others have mentioned this, and this is going to be reinforced in future videos. But the important thing to know is that although the experiences are very different, there's a few basic things that every student needs to get approved School of Medicine credit. You need an approved mentor, and if your mentor is not approved, again, we can work with you to get them approved. There's some things that happen during third year, like statistics and evidence-based medicine. This actually is not under the purview of the third year, but we can help guide you to the resources you need to do that. During the third year, there's a few deadlines. There's an ethics deadline, there's a mid-year assessment, but in general, we've tried to make it not too onerous. And finally, there's a work product. So all students will be strongly encouraged and really expected to talk at the Medical Research Symposium, which is really an institution-wide event that brings all the mentors and the students together to talk about and celebrate the research that medical students at Duke. You'll also do either a thesis, or more and more students are doing a thesis alternative, especially a first or last authored manuscript that describes original research, or a grant. I'll tell you that this is an incredibly important skill. To become an academic, often you'll live or die based on your grants, and your first grant is usually awful. It's much lower stakes when that's done in the perspective of medical school rather than when your career may be at stake. So we'll teach you the basics of grantsmanship, and some students will like to do that as well. How do you get started? I know that it can be paralyzing when you look at all these options in your first year. So the most important thing is to find the right mentor. So how do you go about doing this? Again, we have online resources. You can peruse the third year website. You can look at DMAS. So again, DMAS is a matching program, which by the way is secure. It's students talking about their experiences for other students, and faculty don't even have access to it. So we really encourage honesty in a way that students might feel vulnerable right after they finish their research experience. In addition, MedSpace, so all the abstracts, all the poster presentations are listed on the website, so you could actually look at what prior students have done, as well as other resources. So for example, a lot of students look at Scholars at Duke to look at prospective mentors. Many students actually find mentors who they find compelling during their first year and just approach them. And an important thing to know, and this has been emphasized by others as well, is that every mentor who serves on the Duke third year elected to be a mentor. They actually jump through hoops because they want to work with medical students. So you never have to feel like you're imposing on a mentor or feel in any way intimidated by that process. We're going to have a series of videos. Maybe the most important video looks at the student perspective of third year, and we're trying to really make this for students, by students, as well as trying to understand the key people in the third year office who can help you through the process, and specific situations like study away, dual degree, scholarships, and how you get reimbursed for travel and poster presentations. So you'll be hearing a lot more about this in future videos, but I want everyone to know that the third year is always open. I'm always accessible, and we're going to introduce the other key members of our third year to you as well in future videos.